try to balance my phone on a branch, and it may fall at any moment. So I guess that will just add a bit of uncertainty and suspense to the viewing experience, I think. Yeah, I'm back in the woods slash recording studio, nature, the wind. I'm very nervous about my phone falling. I feel it like slightly moving, but I'm just going to roll it because the camera's rolling and I can't stop. We're already 40 seconds in. There's no turning back now, unfortunately. But yeah, this is another one of those sort of riff videos. I don't know why I have to introduce it the same way every time. I need to think of more creative and exciting ways to do these things, but if this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, then I guess this will be a new thing for you. But yeah, none of this jibber jabber. I'm going to sort of fly into the vague articulations that I had in my noggin that I wanted to sort of talk about. And yeah, I think I'll title this the question of what really matters, something quite simple, because that's how I sort of script or think about most of these sort of things. It's sort of this basic idea, and it will sort of trigger other ideas, and I'll be there in the shower sort of thinking in my head about what should I say, what do I want to verbalize, what do I want to articulate. And I guess this question of what really matters, it's another one of those basic meaning questions, one of those basic questions of what is there worth doing with this life that we are thrust into, and there's so many different answers to that question, so many different answers that we inherit from the culture, from the family, from our social groups, from the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. There's so many different articulations to this answer of what matters, what ought we to value and prioritize in our life. And it is no easy question to answer, and I guess sort of in the moment, as I am recording this video, talking to people on the internet, I'm sort of articulating some kind of form of an answer, at least as it relates to myself. I find it meaningful, worthwhile to create these kind of videos, this kind of content. It sort of, it titillates or satiates some kind of, sorry, there's a fucking fly. Sorry for that aggression there. I'm not an aggressive person, I don't think. But maybe just saw me assault that fly in a pretty horrible manner, and I apologise to that fly. He'll probably come back with a big gang of flies, and he'll just watch me just get killed on camera. But at least that'll be entertaining, and it will be some kind of cosmic justice, I suppose. But I've waffled. Yeah, coming back to the meaning question, what do we prioritise? Yeah, I there's something about, for me at least, making these videos where I can just talk freely and openly about stuff that I find important. What was, yeah, it's kind of sense that activity has meaning sort of independent of any sort of like instrumental value that it has. I mean, that's not to say that talking about these sort of stuff, and helping other people who consume it, the content, I don't want to use the word consume, but who derive value from the content, that's the instrumental value, I suppose, and we shouldn't knock that. But there's something about meaningful activity where it has intrinsic value. There's something that the action itself is worthwhile, and I guess for many different people, they have different sort of things, different actions, different engagements with the world that, you know, that they find meaningful. And I guess it's like, I'm trying to think of what is the commonality, the common essence of a meaningful way of engaging with the world, you know? And that's maybe a slightly spiritual, psychological kind of question. And, you know, as I was sort of like thinking about, you know, what I was going to say in this video, I was sort of coming back to, you know, the flow state. Because I find the flow state is a very interesting conscious state to enter into, and, you know, people often describe it as a sort of inherently meaningful and, you know, pleasurable kind of state to be in. And it's pleasurable not in a sort of a hedonistic kind of way, but in a way that sort of satiates a sort of a deep, authentic kind of purpose. And the interesting thing about like the flow state is that one can attain it in with such a variety and plurality of activities. You know, music is a, you know, powerful example. It's one that I personally relate to, you know, as a drummer, guitarist, and, you know, learn a bit of keyboard and stuff like that. Like, I find music particularly, you know, the action of listening to it or playing it, you know, it's funny because you think, oh, what is the meaning of music? You know, and it's like, if you're having to ask that question, you don't get it, you know. And people often will think of music and the action of creating, performing music as something to make money or achieve fame or status or some kind of acclaim, some kind of external validation for, whoa, you can make some real good sounds and patterns and stuff. But I don't know, like, there's something about how music can just grip someone's soul, particularly music which is highly emotive, that speaks to very strong emotions, very strong feelings and sentiments, and you can't quite articulate it into words. You just experience it and you let it just sort of consume your body, and, you know, sometimes, you know, you'll get tingles up your spine. You know, some people will cry. I've certainly cried over songs, and it's like the mind is totally silent. You know, you're not thinking about whatever bollocks is pestering your consciousness, whatever worries or anxieties you have. You're just there, just totally absorbed in the moment. And that's, you know, that's the flow state. It's a state of meaningful absorption in some form of activity. And people can find the flow state in, you know, it's inexhaustible, the kind of things that you can find flow in. You know, talking to a friend, joking with a friend, watching a movie, you know, working on some kind of important project, going for a walk, meditating, anything. And it's something interesting about how it's not forceful as well. And I guess this sort of relates to sort of the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, of effortless action, of sort of going with the grain of reality without resistance, without kind of contracted aversion. You're there almost surfing with it, kind of like how a surfer would surf a wave. You know, you have to be attentive, and, you know, you're not just whimsically kind of letting go. You're sort of, you are letting go to the sort of the inherent entropy and disorder of the universe, its inherent kind of capacity for surprises and novelty and its ability to, throw you out. But you can kind of surf it, you can kind of balance, you can find this equilibrium, and you sort of oscillate, but you maintain a kind of stability. But and yeah, it's the flow state is very interesting. And one thing that I'm sort of thinking about now is the kind of pseudo flow states that people often will attain through the use of drugs and psychoactives, and this is something that I can personally attest to. I mean, people often will consume alcohol with friends and stuff like that to kind of enter into a kind of a mimicry of the flow state, because it sort of gives them the capacity to enter into a more disinhibited and spontaneous way of being, where they're not caught up within their internal ruminations, their mind sort of constantly analysing and picking apart everything. They can just sort of be, and there's a kind of trapping of drugs and drug addiction, where one gains this conceptual limiting thought that they need this sort of external thing, whether it's whatever substance, to enter into that flow state, to enter into that sort of that spontaneous kind of childlike, playful kind of way of being in the world. And I'm not going to pass any moral judgment, because I don't think there can be a moral judgment that is passed upon psychoactives. I think they can both be used for profound utility, but also they can become a trap, they can become a source of attachment. And I've seen both sides of this coin, and but if anything, the one thing that I have sort of learned is that one does not need anything external in order to enter into a flow state. I've come to sort of feel as though this sort of spontaneous, flowing way of being in the world it's already there all the time. There's no exit from the entropic soup of existence, to put it one way. And weirdly enough, in that sort of sense, you never really lose that inherent childlike, playful wonder and awe for the novel, streaming flow of life. It never disappears. It can become clouded when your mind becomes clouded by worries and anxieties and responsibilities, obligations and stuff. But that sort of glimmer, it never disappears, and it shouldn't disappear. And people try to recapture it through stuff, through activity, through drugs, through whatever. But it's almost and it can for a fleeting moment, but it's a kind of trap. Like I said, it's a trap to think that these external things are necessary in order to find that meaningful flow state of consciousness. And I guess sort of to come back to that question of what really matters. I wouldn't say it's a correct conclusion to say that it's just the flow state that really matters. I mean, what I'm trying to sort of to get at with these sort of contemplations is to ask the question of both myself and also you who are listening to this video, is to sort of to seriously think about, you know, what is it that gets you meaningfully absorbed in, you know, the moment, meaningfully absorbed in life, and this challenging kind of engagement, which isn't overwhelming, but that makes you feel, you know, competent and like you're in alignment with some kind of, I don't know, this insatiable appetite for, I don't know, for sort of treating life as a sort of an adventure, maybe, as something that, you know, whilst it is hard, there's this value to this hard work, there's value to the strife and the adversity that we engage with day in, day out, you know? I mean, would life be more exciting, more engaging if it was really easy? If we were never challenged? If we were never sort of, you know, filled with doubt? I mean, I don't know, because it is I think it's very natural to look upon the world, particularly in the sort of digital internet age where we have access to so much information, to become utterly overwhelmed with the immense suffering and the immense adversity that may not be within your immediate surroundings, but it's existing, and it has existed, and it will likely continue to exist. It's easy to look at that and think, well, what the fuck is the point, you know? And, you know, it's even more afflicting when this suffering grips you or someone you love, you know. It's even more challenging and even more, well, demoralising, I suppose. But I don't know, it's I guess when I'm confronted with suffering, there's a variety of different responses that you can have. You know, there is the one of learned helplessness, where you give up, where you relinquish the ability to resolve it. And, you know, there are certainly cases where there is, you know, suffering that seems just random and totally indifferent, totally apathetic to our sort of basic moral sensibilities. But there is also suffering that can command a response, that you can do something to resolve it, you know? And I don't think that life is exhaustively suffering. I think suffering is certainly an unavoidable component of it, you know. You know, death is the flip side of life. Our bodies, you know, they maintain a semblance of order for our lifespan, but, you know, they will inevitably give in to entropy and decay. And but I just, you know, I don't quite know where I'm going with this, you know, with these sort of thoughts. But I do think that a serious engagement with what is meaningful has to seriously engage with, you know, the suffering that's in the world. And this isn't to sort of, and I'm hesitant. Because I'm hesitant to sort of exhaustively fixate upon suffering, but I can't ignore it. You can't ignore it, really. But you also, because some people, I feel that, to attend to suffering is not to ignore all the bliss, all the joys, all the meaningful joys of life. And maybe there can be a joy, not of the sort of not of the euphoric kind. There is a joy in attending to suffering in a meaningful and pragmatic way. I don't know. I mean, I hesitate to use the word joy because it can sort of elicit some kind of the wrong kind of connotations. So I don't want it to feel like you're smiling and euphoric whilst dealing with challenging stuff. I mean more the joy, as in the joy of meaningfully engaging with the world and engaging with stuff that you deem worthwhile and that is challenging, but there's a kind of necessity of doing it, And this is something that I feel with a lot of the stuff that interests me. Sometimes, I do find myself engaging with topics and things that are very psychologically challenging, that do sort of elicit a kind of, a depressive kind of response. And, I'm not going to go into it right now, but I think that's kind of the part and parcel of sort of engaging with, serious stuff. But I don't know, at the stage where I am in my life, I don't feel that I haven't had the learned helplessness response, because I don't feel helpless. I feel there is something I can do. I mean, maybe this video and future videos that I do, that I suppose they are sort of articulations of what I feel that I can do, And I think that I'm very aware of, my own limitations. I'm aware that, one person cannot solve everything. You cannot solve all the suffering that's in the world. But what you can do is engage locally, and the first thing you can do as well is healing yourself, attending to the suffering that is in your own life, whether it's inflicted from your environment or whether it's something that you do to yourself. And it's strange and absurd almost, the realization that a non-trivial amount of suffering we do inflict upon ourselves, whether consciously or unconsciously. And it's almost like you think that would be the easiest suffering to resolve, but sometimes it can be the most elusive ones, Yeah. But I've been recording for a bit, and I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but that's just your mind for you. It will take you to wherever it wants to go. And so yeah, I guess for a parting comment, I suppose, if we do want to heal the world, the first step is of course healing yourself. And that's nothing to sniff at, but it is possible. It certainly is possible. And if you derive some kind of value from that. And it's raining now. I've been caught in the elements. But hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.